friend's house. By Thursday, nightmares. I was at my friend's house, a typical suburban residence, surrounded by trees that whispered with the night wind. It was a night like any other, but a subtle unease kept me awake. As I tossed and turned in bed, I felt my throat dry and decided I needed water. The house was steeped in silence, except for the soft snoring of my friend, who slept soundly in the next room. I crept downstairs, trying to not make any noise. The wooden floor creaked under my feet, and the darkness seemed to press down on me as I approached the kitchen. The faint moonlight partially lit the hallway, casting long, distorted shadows on the walls. A sense of discomfort grew inside me, but I ignored it, attributing it to the interrupted sleep. I opened the fridge, feeling the cold light envelop me. I grabbed a pitcher of water and drank directly from it, hearing only the sound of the liquid going down my throat. I closed the fridge, and that's when I heard a faint click coming from the direction of the living room. I stopped, listening carefully, and realized someone was fiddling with the front door lock. Curiosity got the better of me. Slowly, I approached the hallway that led to the front entrance. The silhouette of a woman stood out against the door, and my heart raced as I recognized the figure of my friend's mother. She had her back to me, focused on carefully locking the door, as if trying not to be heard. Shock froze me in place. I knew my friend's mother was out of town. He had told me that earlier. I started to back away, but the wood creaked under my weight, and she turned abruptly. Our eyes met for a brief moment, but something was wrong with her. Her eyes were empty, lifeless, as if she didn't really see me. She began walking toward me with a slow, dragging gait, as if being pulled by some invisible string. The air around me seemed to grow colder with each step she took. My legs trembled, but I managed to turn and run back to my friend's room. The door slammed shut behind me, and I shook my friend awake with all the strength I could muster. He woke up confused, rubbing his eyes. "What is it?" he mumbled, still groggy. I quickly told him what I had just seen, trying not to sound crazy. When I mentioned his mother, he froze, his face instantly pale. "My mom isn't here. She's miles away visiting my aunt," he said with his voice trembling. The fear in his voice made me realize something was terribly wrong. He quickly got up and locked the bedroom door, placing a chair against it for reinforcement. We stayed silent, ears straining for any sound coming from the hallway. The silence that followed was suffocating, broken only by our heavy breathing. Minutes passed, but they felt like hours. The air in the room became oppressive, as if we were being watched. Finally, we heard soft footsteps in the hallway, slowly approaching the door. I could feel my heart pounding in my throat. My friend grabbed his phone and started dialing frantically, but there was no signal. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Suddenly, the doorknob began to turn slowly, accompanied by a soft scratching on the wood. "Don't open it," I whispered, gripping my friend's arm. He nodded, his eyes wide with fear. The door trembled, as if someone was gently pushing, testing the chair's resistance. Then, everything stopped. The silence returned, but it was different now. Denser, more threatening. The door didn't move anymore, and the sound of footsteps retreating echoed down the hallway. We were paralyzed, unsure if we should feel relieved or even more terrified. Time seemed to have stopped, each second stretching into an eternity of dread. My friend finally broke the silence. "This can't be happening," he whispered, as if trying to convince himself. But the truth was clear. Something was very wrong with this house. We decided we couldn't stay there any longer. We needed to leave, but the thought of facing whatever was out there was terrifying. We gathered our courage and decided to escape through the bedroom window. With difficulty, we opened the window and crawled out. The cold night air wrapped around us as we dropped onto the wet grass. We crouched for a moment, trying to listen for any signs of being followed. Everything was quiet, but the stillness only deepened our fear. We started running across the yard, heading for the street. The trees around us seemed taller and more menacing under the moonlight. When we reached the gate, the sound of hurried footsteps echoed behind us. We looked back and saw my friend's mother standing at the edge of the garden, watching us with those empty eyes. She didn't move, but something in her gaze made us speed up. We ran like never before, with the sound of our hearts pounding in our ears. We reached the deserted street and kept running until the house was far behind. Finally, we stopped, panting and cold with sweat, trying to process what had happened. We hid in a nearby playground, where we sat on a bench still in shock. The silence of the night seemed to mock us. We tried calling my friend's parents again, but the phone still had no signal. Something was isolating us, trapping us in that endless night of terror. Time passed slowly, and the sky began to lighten with the first rays of sun. We felt a momentary relief, as if the light could dispel whatever that evil presence was. When we returned to the house, we found that the front door was slightly ajar, gently swinging with the morning breeze. My friend went in first, cautiously, and I followed. The house seemed normal, almost welcoming under the daylight, but the discomfort was still there, a shadow hanging over us. There was no sign of his mother, and everything was in its place as if nothing had happened. We decided to pack our things and leave immediately. While my friend was grabbing his clothes in the bedroom, I went to the kitchen. The water pitcher was exactly where I had left it, but next to it was a note. I picked up the piece of paper, feeling my heart race again. The scribbled words chilled me to the bone. She always comes back when night falls. The note fell from my hand, and I ran back to the bedroom. My friend was standing at the door, staring fixedly at something on the floor. I followed his gaze and saw a red stain that hadn't been there before, slowly spreading across the carpet. We didn't need to say anything. We knew it wasn't safe to stay another minute in that house. We ran out, leaving everything behind. the street, one last look at the house revealed something that made my blood run cold. In the bedroom window, my friend's mother was standing, watching us with a sinister smile on her face. She slowly raised her hand and waved before disappearing into the darkness. That was the last time I saw my friend. He moved away with his father to another city, and we never talked about that night again. But to this day, when night falls and the house is quiet, I remember that smile, and I can't help but think that somewhere she's still waiting for us.